Most horror gives you a logic. Find the curse, perform the rite, and you survive. Asian horror often removes that logic entirely. Take Ju-on. A single domestic crime contaminates an entire house, turning ordinary rooms into carriers of trauma. In the next 5 minutes, I'll explain the cultural, historical, and cinematic techniques that make that choice so devastating, and why those techniques mess with your sense of agency long after the credits roll. The origin of this nightmare is brutally simple. A husband murders his wife and child in a blind rage before taking his own life. That is the whole story. There is no ancient demon or elaborate ritual, just a domestic crime that spills so much pain into the walls that the house becomes a permanent trap. Kayako's death rattle, that awful croaking sound, repeats endlessly because her final moment never ended. Her rage soaked into the floorboards and now sticks to you like a physical contamination. You go home and lock your door, but it follows you anyway. It isn't because you did anything wrong, but simply because you touched the trauma. That's the detail that gets under your skin. Western horror usually ties guilt directly to the victim, meaning you broke a rule, you read the book, or you open the box. There is a logic to it. Ju-on strips all of that away. The curse spreads like a viral infection that is completely indifferent to who you are. Whether you're a social worker, a security guard, or a schoolgirl, your backstory doesn't matter at all. The moment you enter that house, you become a carrier of something you can't escape. The architecture itself becomes the antagonist. Hallways seem to stretch, shadows cling to the corners, and even the bright daylight feels thin and unconvincing. This reflects a deeper, more terrifying suspicion that trauma isn't a private thing. It seeps out and stains every single thing it touches. You can't negotiate with it, you can't understand it, and you definitely can't forgive it. All you can do is sit and wait for the inevitable. That total lack of agency, the slow realization that nothing you do will change the outcome, is what leaves a permanent mark on your mind. The thing is, Ju-on didn't just invent this fear out of thin air. It pulled from a very real cultural well. In Japan, there are properties known as Jiko Bukken, which is stigmatized real estate, where a death, often a violent one, occurred on the premises. Landlords are legally required to disclose this history to potential tenants before they sign a lease. People do choose to live in them, but they always get a steep discount because the belief that a horrible death leaves a residue isn't just a movie gimmick. It is a quiet, persistent anxiety. The thought that the very walls might hold onto someone's final agony is baked into everyday life. Folklore gives this belief a very long history. The concept of the onryo, a vengeful spirit born from intense rage or injustice, was never just campfire talk. Heian period court records show that the government actually performed appeasement rituals for wronged nobles whose spirits were believed to cause earthquakes, famines, and plagues. Sugawara no Michizane was a scholar who died in exile after a political betrayal, and he was posthumously enshrined as a deity specifically to calm the disasters people blamed on his wrath. Even the state treated a grudge like a public health crisis. This blurring between psychological truth and supernatural consequence is exactly what makes Asian horror feel so plausible. If a person dies in unbearable pain, the human brain doesn't easily accept that the pain just vanishes into nothing. The emotion has to go somewhere. In Western frameworks, we internalize it as guilt or trauma for the survivors. In these stories, it externalizes. It infects the physical space until it becomes a presence. So when you watch Kayako crawl down those stairs, you're not just seeing a scary ghost, you're seeing a meditation on what it means for rage to outlive the body. The real-world cases, like the stigmatized apartments and the lawsuits over undisclosed deaths, prove that people still can't quite dismiss the idea that a room can remember what happened inside it. These stories stick with you because they refuse to pretend that the world makes sense, and you won't find any lessons or closure or a final girl who manages to outsmart the monster. The curse just keeps spreading while remaining completely indifferent to whether you are guilty or innocent. That is a tough pill to swallow because we all want the world to be fair, and we desperately want to believe that suffering happens for a specific reason. Asian horror offers nothing but the slow churn of consequence, which is exactly why it feels so effective and unsettling. The thing hiding under your bed isn't waiting for you to fix its pain because it has already swallowed that grief, and now it is coming for you too. If you enjoy learning about the unknown, unexplained, and horror with an Asian twist, subscribe so you don't miss our next video.